Nancy Hulse. I've kind of been saying hi to you as you come in. I get a sense there's a lot of you from the CCR&R and from I've been practicing this Willamette Valley Community Action Center. I met some child care providers back here and some other interested groups. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me here today. I am trying to be inclusive and have some Spanish subtitles happening here, but obviously I can't control Google Translate, so hopefully it works out well enough for those of you who might need that. So I'm kind of a trainer at core. I've worked in early childhood for many years. I'm gonna get into that, but you know, really the heart of this for me is education and education of early educators, and I see that as that outcome for children is through having early educators and school age professionals who are prepared and have training and education, and they have the knowledge and skills. And so with that trainer core of me, I had to put a PowerPoint together, and I always kind of feel, you know, you have that audio and that visual. So this is me. This was taken around Christmas, and I'm trying this title on for size. Y'all will be able to tell me whether or not this works, but whether or not I can get that CCR&R Program Director there. Oh, and on the comment cards it says Cassandra. That's still me, by the way. So many of you, this is your first interaction with me. You don't know anything about me. You didn't get to see my resume or participate in any of those interviews. So give you a little bit of snapshot about kind of my background and my education and experience. So I've worked at early childhood for 30 years, 15 years of those being in the Child Care Resource Referral with CCR&R in Anchorage, Alaska. I saw early on working in early childhood the need for education and training, and that's where that core of me comes in. And you know, I saw people joining the field just because it was an entry job and they didn't really have the passion or the interest with children, they didn't have the education. So that's where that really awoke something in me, and I felt like I have to do something about that. And I started doing staff meetings, you know, in my center where I worked at the time, which was an accredited center. And so then from that I decided, well, I gotta kind of put my mouth where my money is and I need to get a degree. So I went to the University of Alaska and I got an associate's degree in early childhood. Unfortunately at that time there was not a bachelor's degree. And as I was working full-time child care, of course I kind of did it a class here, a class there until I could get that associate's degree. And then I'm looking, well, what am I gonna do next? And I decided I was gonna get a bachelor's degree, and I went to Wayland Baptist University. They have a satellite campus in Anchorage, Alaska. And so I got my bachelor's degree in human services, specializing in early childhood. And what I really liked about that human services is it felt like it really gave me a broader view, even though early childhood is my love. You know, I felt like I saw other social services and the importance of that and how they're connected from that early childhood up through adulthood. Then, because I wasn't done yet, I had to get a master's degree, and I went to the University of Phoenix, and I did that by distance, and I got my master's in adult education and training. So again, that's that core of me, how important that is to have that training background and seeing how it supports the education and the advancement of others. Well, what was I gonna do next? I decided I didn't want to get a PhD. I figured I was done, but you know, there's still always something to learn and to grow from. So I got enrolled in a class in Alaska for the Forker Group. The Forker Group is a nonprofit that supports other nonprofits, and they have trainings and they have a lot of different resources and supports to help nonprofits strengthen themselves. And so I took what was called a Certificate of Nonprofit Management, and it was about a 5-6 month class, and it was pretty intensive, and it was 10 credits, and it covered everything: human resources, volunteer recruitment, finances, budget, marketing, communications, you name it, social media. I can't say that I'm an expert in any of those things, but I feel like it's really given me enough of a foundation for what I have done in the last many years since I got that certificate. So that's my education. That's the boring stuff. Experience. I have been working in the early childhood field for over 30 years. I have worked directly with children, you know, as a teacher, you know, as an education coordinator in a program, supporting the education coordinator, and I've worked in military childcare. I was a family childcare at one point for a couple years. I didn't like that so much myself. You know, being the isolated, not that I didn't take kids to parks and things, but that was just not for me. And so I did do that for a little while. So I've got a wide range of experience with different ages. I've done summer camp. Infants and toddlers is really my strength and my jam. Something about those infants and toddlers and seeing those first is just so amazing for me. So I did work at the Providence in Anchorage, Alaska. They have a child care center as part of their hospital for their staff employees. And I was a lead teacher there, primarily infants and toddlers, for almost 10 years. And so then I went to THREAD, which is the Child Care Resource and Referral Agency there for the state of Alaska. And so I like to say that 10 years here, 15 years, I'm not a flight risk. I'm gonna, you know, wherever I go, I'm gonna want to put down roots and really get to, you know the environment and the culture and the needs. And I want to support that and make sure that I am advocating for those things and I'm benefiting that. So at THREAD, most of my work the last 15 years, I've done direct service, I've done child care referrals, I have been doing technical assistance, I developed and facilitated trainings, which I rose through those ranks. And at the time, their professional development and family services were not really separated. And as they separated, I went to the professional development side. Because remember, I said I'm a trainer at CORE, right? So that's where I went. And I was doing CDA advising, the Child Development Associate credential. I was doing trainings. Eventually, I became supervisor and manager of those things. I was coordinating the training calendar. I was recruiting trainers, training trainers, assessing trainers. I was the CDA advising. Is it still working? And I was also doing some of our mini grants and our other programs to provide quality supports to get money into the field, into programs to help with their goals for improving themselves. So that's kind of a snapshot sample of what some of those things that I've done at THREAD have been over the last 15 years. This last year, I was specifically been working in, so it's not my imagination, just my imagination. Sorry, you don't want me to sing. But you'll find that I do often break out in song in just the grocery store, wherever. Maybe that's something you don't want to know about me. The last year, I've actually been working in the registry. It's called SEED, the System for Early Education and Development. I know you guys have ORO, and I'm connected with them, and I have meetings with them. And so I'm seeing kind of a different side of those services. And where I am, those things are all housed at THREAD. So a little bit about my experience. So I've been doing a lot of reading. Before I applied for this job, I looked through the website, I read your board meeting minute notes. There's this place called GuideStar. I can see your tax records for 2018, 19, and 20 for the Mid-Willamette. I'm a nosy person. I like data and numbers. I asked, I'd like a copy of the budget, please. I would like to see the organizational chart, please. This comes back to that FORC program management, nonprofit management in me. So I thought I'd kind of share a little bit about some of the differences in the states. And I tried to make these look, even though Alaska was really big, I was trying to make these look, pretty equitable, so I'm not making any kind of favoritism. So, THREAD and your own CCR&R. So I went to I think the main one off Center Street in the hospital yesterday and took my picture in front of the sign. As I was driving around today looking for a clicker, I came across this and I had to change the picture real quick. So I was outside about 12, if anybody was there and saw me, that was me, the crazy person taking selfies with the sign. So the Child Care Resource Referral Agency in Alaska is THREAD. There's only one Child Care Resource Referral Agency in the state of Alaska. We are a big state, however, we have a very small population. The population of Anchorage alone, where I'm based out of, is about the same as your 3 counties that you service right here. But it is a statewide network. We have offices across the state. We do fly across the state. I have had to get on a little plane, sit right next to the pilot, fly somewhere, get off, get picked up by a snow machine, and sleep in a school or a Head Start to provide services and help my staff, teach them how to prepare for that kind of travel. I don't think that's gonna happen here, I hope. Anyway, so I've talked a little bit about THREAD. I've been there for 15 years. I've told you a little bit about what I've been doing there. But I see here, you guys have a network of CCR&Rs. You have 15 of them. I've been doing my research. I've been reading quite a bit. And I just think that's really, first of all, the population and the needs, but what I'm seeing that Oregon is doing is so much more advanced, and I can see why you need all those additional supports. So I mentioned the last year, I've been working within the registry, the seed registry. It is housed at Thread. And I have been having meetings with the Oro folks. I know they're out of, I believe, the Portland State University, because we have National Workforce Registry Alliance meetings and regional meetings. So I know a little bit about them. I think that gives me a little check that, you know, I'm not so foreign. I know a little bit about Oregon and your registry. What is, I think, nice about how my experience with the registry and the quality recognition improvement system is it's housed at Thread. So I have seen how these things are really kind of interdependent and connected and influence one another. And I think that they can be successful and do great separate, but just still how important that communication is between the different organizations. And that was something coming into it that I wanted to change about the seed registry and get a better perception about the customer service and the time it takes to get your turnaround to get your career ladder. It is very similar with the career ladder, you know, assigning yourself to the ladder and having different services and supports to help you advance throughout that career ladder. Okay, again, our quality recognition improvement system, Learn and Grow, is housed at Thread. And you know, it's kind of interesting that we both call it a recognition system because typically it's a quality rating system, but this is something that was really important to Alaska, that we wanted to be about recognizing quality and not necessarily that focus on that, that rating piece. It is part of the system, but yes. But yes, I know a little bit about Spark. I hear about Spark. I know I'm kind of isolated in Alaska. I don't necessarily live in an igloo. I do have internet. We do read about what other states are doing for their CCR&Rs, their quality recognition improvement systems, and their registries, because you know we try to be able to cherry pick some of those really great things about those systems. And then, you know, of course, discard the things that, oh, that won't work in our state, or that's not really a good relation for us.
Cassandra, I'm going to give you a 2-minute warning.
Oh, no. Okay, we're going to skip the Department of Education. It's not that important, right? Hopefully there's no Department of Education members in this room right now. So this is me and my family. My daughter just moved to Japan a few months ago, and this is kind of the impetus of me wanting to move. I've known for a few years she was going to move. She's teaching English in Japan. But that, what was I going to do when she moved? So she had to delay with COVID. She couldn't get a work visa. But what did I want to do? And I have a lot of family actually in Oregon. And so I decided that, you know, I would kind of, after she got moved and she got settled, that I would find a position in Oregon, and bam, this one came out from like the lightning out of the sky. It was like tailor-made to me. That's my dog Nala. I haven't broken it to her yet that we're moving to Oregon. Talk a little bit about my personal interest. I am obsessed with Hamilton. I told you I like to sing. I've been working on my own fitness, but I'm gonna go fast since I'm on my time here. I have family in Oregon. I have been here more than 2019 and 22, but those are the most recognizable pictures that you would recognize something you wouldn't necessarily know as an Oregon if I was in my brother's living room. But I come down about once a year to see family, and so this is not all that alien to me. It's part of the Pacific Northwest. The environment is very similar. It is a little hotter than what I'm used to, but I do have a support system in moving, and I'm ready to make that happen. So this is my end. So I'm not normally a risk taker by nature. I really like to know my options and things, but I went ziplining with my daughter about a year ago, and there's just something about it that after a while you trust your harness and you really enjoy the experience. And so I think that this is that moment for me where I'm just gonna leap and trust the experience and where it lands me. And again, I'm trying on that title, so I just wanted you to know that was me this morning, taking pictures in front of the CCR&R. So I really thank you for this opportunity to come here and talk to you, and I look forward to hearing your questions soon.
Thank you, Cassie. Our second finalist is known to many of you. She is Jenna Sanders. She's the Associate Director for our CCR&R program. And Jenna has a presentation she's trying to bring up on the computer.
I did to, log in,
Yeah.
those security measures.
All right, so here she is, our friend Jenna Sanders.
So excited to hang out with everybody today. I'm so excited to see all these faces that I recognize and a few that I don't. I'm pretty excited that I got this far. A lot of you at different points have heard me say I'd never wanted this job. Partly because I always wanted Shannon to have this job, but accepting that she is not going to have this job anymore means that I'm ready to step up. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jenna Sanders. I graduated high school in Hawaii. I decided I'd do some sort of, we're two truths and a lie. There's no lie in this, however. But most people don't know I graduated high school in Hawaii. I am a native Oregonian, but during my childhood, I traveled around a little bit and landed myself back in Oregon for college and have never left. I have 2 children and 1 granddaughter who is obviously the love of my life. If you look at the pictures, this is sort of what my phone looks like as well. She is a sweetheart, and I love plants. As some of you know, I am fairly obsessed. I have a plant wall at home. Okay, I have 2 plant walls at home. Let's be real. I am so passionate about early childhood education and this program, and I feel like I have the gift of really being able to look at early childhood education from a systems perspective. I have completed all of my coursework for my education doctorate degree. I'm working on my dissertation. I'll talk about it in a minute. But I think that has helped that piece as well in terms of thinking about how do I talk about early childhood education to people like Mike back there and and make it accessible and understandable and try and help people understand our system, because it's easy for us to talk to each other, right? We have all these acronyms, ORO and NACE and PSU and all these things, EC, but how do we talk to all the other people who are so important in moving the dial and partnering and all the funders and all of the people we want to bring into our story and really move the dial with early childhood. I am constantly looking to find ways to have an impact on workforce development and thinking about how do we do that in sustainable ways. Most of you may not know that I actually enjoy numbers and budgeting and trying to figure out how to make sense. I went to Callie the other day and I'm like, Callie, these numbers don't make sense to me. Can you help me? Am I right in thinking this? And she's like, yeah, I think you are. I think we're double dipping here and we don't want to present that to somebody else. So I really enjoy that sort of looking at the numbers and trying to have them make sense. And I really love people. As many of you know, this is my thing. I love talking to people. I love training. I love making the connections in the community and with staff and with educators, and then helping everybody connect to each other. I started out in psychology. I was a mental health therapist and a drug and alcohol therapist for a while. You may not know that about me either. But I really think that helps me ground and come from a place of action instead of reaction. It's helped me stay sane during this process. So I did some other kind of nannying kind of stuff at points in my life, but prior to getting hired at CCR&R, I was running my own family childcare. And in doing that, I was part of a focused childcare network with Hannah, and I was working on QRIS at Spark. It was not yet called Spark at that point. So I started out in all of this professional development realm in doing it myself before I started talking to other people about how to do it. I've had all kinds of jobs. These are just the different titles. I had to ask HR what years it was because I've done all kinds of random things. I have done almost everything. I have been a consultant. I worked I was our consultant for Inclusive Partners for about a year when we held that contract briefly. I run networks, both family child care and center director networks, training. I have coordinated the statewide webinars for quite a while now. The date is on here later. I had to look back, really, 2016 we discovered. People keep asking us, how long have you been doing statewide webinars? And we're like, a couple years. 2016. Yeah, okay. I also have been the hiring manager, and still am. I have helped with budgets. I run our Yamhill County office, and coordinate all the services there. And I have a close partnership with both hubs, but especially the Yamhill County hub, because I am the chair of the Early Learning Council. I've been the Associate Program Director since 2020, and I have been intensively trying to make sure I understand every part of our agency and our program since then. And just sort of following Shannon around and going, okay, how does that work? What do we do about that? I know I still don't know everything. Things keep coming up and I'm like, wait, how do we do that? What does that look like? But without the last 3 years of really intensively sort of being immersed in every piece of it, I don't think I would be standing here today. I would not even have applied because I would not have felt ready. So I feel like that has really grounded me in a good place for wanting this position. Like I said earlier, I am partway through my education and leadership doctorate in special education. This has been a really fun journey because I've had to talk to people who don't know anything about early childhood. They know a lot about education and they don't know anything about early childhood. And so I have to figure out how to communicate what it looks like and how it's different than K-12 and how it's different than higher ed, which has been a fantastic experience. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology and a bachelor's degree in psychology and a minor in Spanish. I'm a step 10 and I'm a master trainer. And at one point when it existed, I was part of the committee that reviewed trainings, which was a fantastic experience in understanding how to sort of develop them. There's some things I wanted to talk about that I'm super excited about that I have been part of recently. Jen and I were part of a task force. The Yamhill County Commissioners have $2.2 million of ARPA funds that they have allocated to early childhood, and they said, we want you to figure out what to do. And we said, great, and we want to spend some time really being thoughtful and bringing in the community and bringing in parents and business owners and all kinds of things, and really thinking about how to make this impactful and sustainable and to move the dial, not just throw money at things. And we have come up with some amazing things. We are in contract negotiations for community action to be the hold all the money. We're gonna get to do some fun projects like hopefully opening a new center that is also gonna serve as a training center for new teachers, and have some apprenticeships and somebody to help them, as well as doing some business navigation and some other cool things. I'm so glad you came, Mike. Mike and I have been working on the very beginnings of a project trying to get family child care into low-income housing. And we have some exciting things happening where we're our first potential site is Villa del Sol in McMinnville. And we discovered that it looks like with zoning, we might be able to do a family child care in their community room, which thanks to licensing, helping us think way outside the box is really exciting because it may help us move around some hurdles. We've been doing regional and statewide webinars since 2016, which allowed us to ramp up during COVID and really serve the community in some really impactful ways during COVID. We did a whole bunch of trainings for Head Start at one point when they were trying to figure out what to do with their staff, but we also just did more trainings on a regular basis. We've since ramped down a little bit, but we have a proposal in front of the Early Learning Division for them to fund a full-time position that will be housed at our Child Care Resource and Referral in order to continue this project, which is really exciting because up until now, it's been a passion project with no money. So hopefully that will help it be a little more sustainable and get me out of it. Like, I'm ready to do my job and not this and my job. And I have been the Yamhill County Early Learning Council Chair since 2018. I used to have co-chairs and then K-12 got too busy, and so I've been alone for a while with Jen helping support me. I really think that it is so important for us to remember that ultimately who we serve is our children. We were doing an interview yesterday, and we were talking about what would you do if you went into a program and they were over ratio? And they're like, I don't know what I would do. And this whole concept came up in terms of, ultimately, as much as we're trying to build relationships and help support increased quality and help support educators, in the end, our clients are children. All of our clients are children. And I think this is something that it is so important to hold on to and not lose track of who our true clients are for all of us. Why me? Why should I have this position? My goal in applying for this was not to get to move, to get a different job, to go somewhere else. I want to continue to support community action and child care resource and referral in empowering people to change their lives and exit poverty by providing vital services and community leadership. Yes, I stole the mission. Because I really truly believe in that. I want to continue to be able to participate in collaborative community partnerships to make system level changes, to really move the dial on how do we have things work in a way that is sustainable for all of us, so that, programs aren't saying when the ARPA funds run out, I don't know how our doors are going to stay open. Not just throwing money at new programs, but also figuring out how to sustain the ones we already have. I was a family child care provider. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just trying to stay home with my kids for a little bit. And I think it's so important that we meet people where they're at on their educational journey, and that we bring them in and help them learn about being a professional in that language. Thinking about how do we help them start to see themselves as educators? How do we help them start to have their children see them as educators, and the families, so that they're coming to the programs and saying, hello, teacher, as opposed to, oh, I'm dropping them off, where they're gonna get babysat. Let's move out of that. I so passionately believe in professionalizing the profession. I really have a huge focus on increasing the quality of early childhood education and improving the experience of children. I'm passionate about equity, inclusion, diversity, and seeing people as individuals. And I really feel like I have the skills, knowledge, and relationships to be successful. I have worked incredibly hard to help support so many people that are here, not to win a popularity contest, but because I believe in the work. And because I want all of us to be successful, and I want all of us to be in rooms like this in the future, moving forward, and not having our system collapse, which, has been a little scary the last couple of years in terms of COVID and all those kinds of things. So that's my entire presentation. Thank you all so much.
So this question is for both of you. How do both of you plan on incorporating or bringing in more providers who speak other languages than just Spanish and English, so like Russian and other languages that we're seeing coming to Marion, Polk, and Yamhill communities.
Yes, and you are, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Cassandra.
Cassandra, right, that's what I should have known.
That's probably why you blocked it out.
I told her to remember. Yeah, so, I mean, you saw I tried to be inclusive in using the Spanish translations here because I saw on Facebook you were using both English and Spanish on your promotion. And this is something in Alaska. Alaska is a very diverse transient population. We have a lot of different languages. One of our schools has like one of the most languages in the whole country. And so something that I've been working on and doing in my previous job in the professional development at Thread was making sure that my staff could use a PowerPoint and use the different language translations. You know, we have everything in English and Spanish, our forms, our website, and all those things, and we were catering to other languages. While the focus was on Spanish and English, you know, we had the website could be translated in other languages. We were using interpreter services, and trying to make sure we had the right people in those environments and communities to recruit people whose language may not necessarily be English.
I think there's so many answers to this, but one of the things that I have really been advocating for, and I'm hopeful with the position for having a coordinator for statewide webinars, is right now we are doing statewide webinars in English, Spanish, and Russian. The hope is that if we have funding and FTE for that we could start expanding those into more languages. I think that part of our group right here, we have in our program, we have a group, and I don't remember your new name. I tried to memorize. Focused professional. We have they don't know their name either. So I don't feel quite so bad that I don't remember. The Spanish group, and they have been really focusing and talking about how to professionalize the language we're using and doing a little bit more standardization of professional language in terms of emails, trainings, documents, and really being incredibly thoughtful. I also think the other piece of what we do is advocate, is that we recently discovered that the Preschool Promise Manual is not translated into Russian, despite the fact that there are Russian-speaking programs that have the grant. And so, our other, I think, piece of what we do is advocate. And so we go back to the Early Learning Division and are like, hey, this isn't okay. And, and I think we do that in a lot of different ways. One, by pointing out the inequities and saying, hey, this is important. But also, when there are things where they're like, we want you to participate in this thing where, your educators have to do this online program, and oh, well, but it's only in English, that we can then go back to them and say, we would love to participate when it's accessible in all the languages we serve.
I don't need a microphone, so loud. Hi, my name is Patience, I'm a preschool promise coach. Cassandra, I have a question. What would be the number one thing you would do to make sure you had a positive work environment and staff that felt heard and appreciated?
You said your name is Patience?
It is.
Hi, thank you for the
Don't be
question.
confused by that, because I'm really
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so obviously I'm at a disadvantage that I don't know many of you and I don't know the organization specifically and your kind of culture. So I think it would have to come in and start with building those relationships and having one-on-one meetings with everybody to get to know them, hear what their needs are. I'm a pretty observant person, and so a lot of times I pick up on things just, in the interactions and, exposure to other people, and then trying to use that to draw on them. Something that I said in my interviews is that I'm always gonna put my staff first, even if often to it's my own detriment. I'm gonna make sure that they get the answers and things that they need, and that they feel that they can come talk to me. If there's a mistake made, I don't want them to fear coming to me. I want to be able to, how do we fix that and where do we move on from here and have that learning moment. And then of course, if it does continue, then you might have to take a different avenue. But ideally that's not, where you wanna go. You want it to be so that we can have a collective conversation. And you guys all right now are the experts on Salem, on Oregon, on your organization, on your departments. And so I'm really gonna be relying on you.
Jen, you wanna answer too?
I can, she directed it towards her, so I wasn't just for
Cassie. Okay, sorry. Any other questions? Yeah, Sarah's got her hand up and Mike.
So, this would be for both of you. What strategies or techniques would you bring in regarding recruiting new educators into the system, regardless of the license type, if they're in-home or centers? What would you do to help build the capacity in our area?
Oh, sure. We've been really talking about this a lot in our strategic planning meetings and really thinking about outreach, and instead of, historically we've done sort of a lot of, hey, there's an event, let's go do that event, which for those of us who love children, which is all of us, it's really fun because you get to go hang out with kids and blow bubbles and do jumping jacks and do fun things like that. But it's not necessarily helping us move the dial. And so I'm really starting to think about doing more targeted outreach, maybe partnering with Head Start to go in to do family nights, especially in areas that we we have even bigger childcare deserts than normal. But also, thinking about, we were at a meeting the last, I don't know, so many days all running together, but we were at a meeting where they were talking about going into the high schools and recruiting, and trying to partner with agencies that are already doing some things and trying to really think outside of the box and bring in people who may not have even ever heard of us, as well as doing a marketing campaign. We're looking at a statewide marketing campaign for CCR&Rs right now.
So I can talk about this on an Alaska perspective. Hopefully you're not tired of hearing that word, Alaska. And hopefully you can find some nuggets that you can relate to as well here. But some of the things that Jenna said are some of the things that we've been doing in Alaska as well, trying to do some promotion, working with our state licensing and regulatory body to try to recruit. We've been traveling across the state to provide different community events and partnerships to try to recruit, especially in Alaska. There's a lot of rural communities that you can't get to except for a little plane, and there is no childcare except for maybe somebody's family member, and they've got all the village's children in that home, which is not necessarily safe. So trying to, even if they decide not to become licensed, what training and supports can we get them to make sure that the best interest of those children are involved. We've also done some work with the high schools and the middle schools where we've gone in on career days and we've talked about early childhood. Not specifically that maybe they're gonna enter the field, but in a generic way, because one day they're gonna be a parent. They might have stepkids or nephews and nieces, or they're exposed to other people's children. Of course, we would love for them to get to the early childhood field, but just how important that is to them foundationally to have that in their future as an adult later in life. And just using any of the resources and supports and grabbing onto any opportunities that you can when you can to advocate and talk to somebody. Hey, have you thought? That's how I got trainers. Talking to people and I'm like, hey, you're really good at circle time. Come train for me. I'll do that.
Thank you. Mike?
One of the key groups you support are home care centers, family homes, certified or licensed. And a lot of times it's one person taking care of 6 or 8 children. What type of structured learning programs, curriculum can one person implement in that type of environment?
So many. I mean, if you think about you know, there's pluses and minuses of all the different types of, you know, care. But, you know, family child care, you get a range of ages. So there's so much peer learning and play-based learning and just observation of, wow, what are they doing, and I want to do that. And so, I mean, I think that it can be an incredibly rich experience and have so many different components to it in terms of helping build social emotional skills and navigate, you know, how do you interact with other people and how do you interact with people at different developmental stages and all of that. I think that, you know, part of it is helping support family child care programs in learning how to communicate what it is they're doing to parents and why it's so valuable, so that because there are differences, right? There may not be some of the same level of structure or same level of curriculum, but in terms of all the social emotional stuff, which is what is primarily important in 0 to 5, there are such rich experiences in bonding and relationship building that they may not be able to get at that same level anywhere else.
I don't know if you were here when I spoke earlier. I said family child care is not for me. I did it for a couple years, and that's actually given me a lot of respect for it. I know that you know, not anybody can do child care, early education, let alone family child care, you know, with that isolation and being the only one and the long hours that they have. But your question is kind of about curriculum and structure and scheduling for them. You know, it's, you know, starting small, you know, what can they do? What are their goals for themselves? And, you know, having kind of that technical assistance coaching discussion with them on what would they like to try. You know, it could be a small thing. It could be just a monthly calendar and have one activity for the day. They don't necessarily have to have an art every day or a book every day, but one thing planned for the day, and how you can have some flexibility in that. That, you know, if you don't get to that book today, or the kids ask for a different book, that's okay. So starting with some of those small things and how you can build up to that, to then you can have, you know, a better established curriculum. And I agree how important it is for families, whether it's a center or a family childcare, to identify what their children are doing and learning throughout the day and those learning opportunities. Because we played with blocks today, we talked about some cause and effect, we talked about numbers, we talked about shapes, that's some math, that's some pre-elementary this way. When we talked about colors with painting, we looked at nature and went for a walk today and got some activity. So it's, and some of that might be for the family childcare or the educator to be able to learn those things and identify them themselves before they're able to communicate them. But, you know, ideally, it's just finding out what their goals for themselves are, and, you know, how can you start small and build on that. And a lot of times when they see some success, like, oh, we planned this activity and the children's behavior is improved, they'll want to do more and continue.
Isela?
Yeah, can you hear me more?
Mhm.
Okay, for both, how will you make sure your staff feel included in all program activities?
I'll start. Well, first of all, I don't know all the program activities, and I admit that. I've been doing a lot of reading, like I said, but there's still so much more for me to learn and figure out. And I, by no means, think that I'm gonna come in and change everything, and I know everything. So it's really getting to know all of you, getting to know what you find is really important about what's working in the department and within the organization, and listening to you and having those opportunities. And then, you know, where can we find some of those pinch points and things that we can work on? What are the small things that we can? But I don't really see myself, you know, am I an expert? I have a lot of knowledge in early childhood and CCR&Rs, but I don't know your CCR&R. So I would really have to come in and get to know all of you and get to know what the systems and the practices are. But, you know, I would want to respect that you all have opinions, you all have expertise, and you all would be coming in way above me. You know, my position might be, you know, at the head of that department, but I'm gonna be learning from all of you.
I think that part of what is so important, and that the agency is looking at, but our program has really been looking at, is the reflective supervision piece. Is that you know, making sure that you have an opportunity to be heard in one-on-one, not just with the director, but with somebody who's your person that actually has time on a regular basis to have scheduled meetings and not just sort of pass-bys in the hall. Not that, you know, not that stopping by and saying hi isn't important, but you know, that somebody, that you're being heard, that you know, your concerns or your needs or your professional development goals are being addressed and heard and attended to, and that I mean, I think that there are so many ways that that we've been trying to have people participate in having their voice heard. One of them is in having team meetings, so that, you know, because sometimes you get into a staff meeting, right, and there's 15 things on the agenda, and you know, we have a certain amount of time, and so, you know, really making sure there are multiple arenas where you can talk about what's going on with you, the Spanish group, and all of the other kinds of the suggestion boxes and all of those kinds of things, in terms of making sure that you know that we want to hear you, and then us, you know, as things are coming in, you know, coming back and saying, hey, we heard this and this is what we're doing, and you know, acknowledging if there's places where we're like, oh, oops, we stumbled, because that happens, right? We get in a hurry, or with all the stuff we just ordered, you know, it's like, oh, we have a timeline, and it's like, oh wait, we totally overlooked making sure that we had, you know, some bilingual materials for one area, and we had to backtrack and, you know, really stop and be thoughtful and apologize and be like, you know, that was my, you know, my bad, along with, you know, mostly my bad in terms of, you know, it's like, oh, we're trying to get all this ordered and get it fast, and you know, looking back, it's like, okay, we need to sometimes slow down a little bit and just be like, okay, let's make sure we've heard voices and aren't missing things before we move forward.
I don't know your name.
Hannah.
Hannah.
So my question is, the larger system in Oregon relies on CCR&Rs to fill in gaps and support new work, sometimes with no added support. How would you support these structures while moving our system forward in a positive direction? Not saying that that is the continued motion of Oregon, but that seems to be the trend. And that's a lot of the work that, as a CCR&R system, we do together. And so we'd really love your thoughts on that for both of you.
So we have integrated into our interviews talking about change, and you know, so we really recognize that, you know, in early childhood in general, in our system, in the ELD, and then within the CCR&R system, that change is happening constantly. And so, you know, part of it is from the very first day, as some of our staff who have been hired recently, you know, before they're even hired, we're having conversations about, hey, change is gonna happen, and there may be, you know, different expectations, there may be short-term, you know, job shifts in order to meet needs. And I think that part of it for me is just going back to, you know, ultimately who we are here to serve as children. And so, you know, seeing ourselves as a team who is supporting the system, even though, you know, your job may be a preschool promise staff, and, you know, your job may be, you know, as a, you know, network coordinator, but, you know, all of us are really trying to support the system, and sometimes it's all hands on deck. And, you know, and that a lot of times includes the director, and the associate director, and the managers, and everything, you know, it's like, okay, we need a CPR done, we'll get it done. And really just being attentive to the needs of the system.
So if I understand your question, kind of change and being adaptable and funding kind of rolled all into one, yeah?
Well, a lot of times they'll say, oh, we have this new project, but can you guys help us? But we don't have staff for you to do it. We're not giving you any more money, but we'd really love this to happen. And so that happens a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yes, so I have experience with that, and that was something that was asked in one of my interviews, is yes, I mean, look at COVID. COVID dropped a bunch of money into our laps that we had to mobilize really quickly, for a good reason, and I'm very happy to have done it, but you know, who could have projected that or done that? But not just the funding with COVID, it happens all the time in my state, in my child care resource referral agency. All of a sudden, the state's got this pot of money and they're asking us to do a nutrition program, or we need to do this, and yeah, we need to reevaluate our staffing and our capacity and where we can move things and make those things. And I don't wanna say unfortunately, my CEO doesn't like to say no, which sometimes, but you know, in Alaska, we're the only CCR&R, and we're really the experts and the only ones that can do a lot of those services. There isn't really anything else out there that can fit that notch, whatever. It sounded right in my head. But, and so, you know, we make it work and we happen. And, you know, sometimes even though you have those moments where you're groaning and, you know, I don't have the time, I'm gonna do that. But in the end, we always made it happen and met the expectations of our funders, and that work